Ba, 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 da, ba, ba, da, 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 da. Gary, why am I doing that?
I don't know, man.
Da, 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 da. No, it's campaign season.
Oh, it is campaign season.
Yeah.
I can't wait. I'm ready for Hillary. Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm ready to. But you know what? I think that I want not just a third party candidate. I think I want third and fourth.
I think I want that too. If we don't get, an actual great president, at the very least we can have some fictional ones.
Yes, at the very least we can let the reptiloids take over by voting with our dollars for either a Traps Snakes or a Turtles Pillars t-shirt.
We are starting another Teespring campaign, and this allows you to show your support for which candidate, which platform, I guess, because they're not individual candites.
Right. It's a ticket. It's a ticket.
Like many things that we say, this isn't as fully developed as a regular presidential campaign.
Right.
But which platform or ticket you favor?
Yeah.
The kind of stability of Turtles and Pillars?
Yeah, or being ready for the future to strike, like with Traps and Snakes.
So these are two super well designed t-shirts. Kole designed them. I take no credit for them. They look great.
Thank you.
And you can find them at Teespring.
You can find them at let's go with Duckfeed.tv/shirts.
Yeah, go to Duckfeed.tv/shirts and check them out. And again, vote with your dollars. And I want to see pictures of people with these shirts. And I want to see people putting one of the shirts up against the other one, like, buy both or just buy one and then find a friend who bought the other one and then
and fight.
Debate. Yeah. Or one of you wait patiently while the other one also waits patiently. One waits like a pillar and one waits like a trap.
Don't blame me. I voted for snakes. So they're going to be $18. We want to keep these cheap. We want to keep them affordable, so as many of you can get them as possible. Teespring prints great quality stuff. It's American Apparel shirt with actual screen printing, which is real nice. And the shipping rates, both domestically and internationally, are very reasonable. Like if you're buying this from within the U.S., you're getting out for like under $22.
And the similar to last time, since this is a Teespring campaign, there's a certain number of shirts that need to be ordered before they're printed. So if you're into this, don't sleep on it. Go to Duckfeed.tv/shirts.
Yes.
And join the campaign.
This is running from March 22nd to April the 5th.
Some of our landings were desperate adventures. We are now prepared to meet the inevitable counterattacks with power and with confidence.
You, conqueror of adversities. It was your answer. I lost everything, but remained here patiently. The throne will certainly receive you. But the question remains, would you tell me? Light, dark, or something else entirely?
My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Kole Ross.
And you're listening to Bonfireside Chat. It is a Cursed favorite.
Yes, and this week we are discussing the Scholar of the First Sin, specifically the patch version that came out with Dark Souls version 1.10.
Yes, this is essentially probably the lion's share of the lore-related content that's coming with the Dark Souls remake. So just to reiterate, this is none of the new enemy placements, none of the I think just enemy placements and none of the huge multiplayer, no rolling deep with 6 dudes. This is just the NPC, the Scholar of the First Sin, and new item descriptions and a new ending.
Yeah, if you're listening from the future, this episode is a product of the incredibly bizarre scheduling of the way that they put this stuff out. Like the new item placements and stuff, not actually available to us as of right now.
Yeah. So if you're wondering why we're not talking about that stuff and why we're covering it in an episode in 2 months, that's why. But this content there, this patch for being totally free actually has a surprisingly large amount of content, more than I was expecting. I knew there'd be a new NPC. I was not expecting a new boss fight. We should also mention that if you haven't played through it, this is going to be super spoiler-tastic because this covers the entire thing. Like it covers all parts of the game and the ending and the new alternate ending. So if you're just done with Dark Souls 2 and you just want to hear what it's about, this is a good podcast for you. If you are planning to play it, then come back afterwards.
Right. And we should probably talk about how you access this content a little bit, or who can possibly, go and, kind of take after it. Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you're starting brand new after having downloaded this patch, then you're just going to proceed like normal until you get to the first point where this new guy shows up. And everything is pretty much the same up till that point. If you have a character who has not killed Nashandra yet, then you are able to go and find this NPC and start that quest as normal. If you have killed Nashandra, you can go find this guy, continue the quest, but you have to bonfire ascetic to get her back, because the quest can only be completed and you can only get this alternate ending if you satisfy a very specific set of circumstances.
Yes. So you can go to it pretty much anytime you want. You just have to, if you want to complete it, if you want to complete this quest to completion, you need to have Nashandra living and alive. You're going to run into this pretty naturally. I love how it's put in the critical path. You know, and I didn't know where this was accessed, and it is genuinely a really kind of a shock when it pops up. Like, I'd seen the trailer for this, which is, I would have loved to have not seen it, you know, which is one of the reasons why I'm so glad I've literally only seen the cover of Bloodborne and somebody running up a hallway. So, like, you know, because this is really visually striking. This is at the Black Gulch bonfire or the final primal bonfire light, either or. And you run into the Scholar of the First Sin, the character.
Right. You round a corner and you see what appears to be a hulking, shambling mass.
Isn't Shulk, isn't that a Pokemon?
Maybe Shulk. I think that might also be a Commander Keen thing. I don't know.
Okay.
To Google.
Who knows? Yeah. So you run into a Pokemon. Who is a real gross, huge Pokemon. This is a big, like, shambling mass of branches and fire.
No.
And he's huge, and it looks like somebody who's going to attack you, which I love. I love that, like, Dark Souls thing when you run into somebody standing still, and it looks like, you know, like when you go down to the bottom of the stairs and you find the partner in Dark Souls 1.
Yeah. And this guy, like, I can't tell. So he looks like a head, doesn't he? Like, your eyes kind of like roll off of him because he's this kind of concordance of all of these different kinds of corruption that we've seen, you know, so far. He looks like one of our cat dog failed undead or whatever, wrapped up in chaos branches.
Yes. Yeah. The chaos branching motif and theming is super prominent. That's definitely intentional. And he has some dialogue for you when you run into him. He just wants to talk.
Young Hollow, there are but two paths. Inherit the order of this world, or destroy it. Only a true monarch can make such a choice. Very few indeed have come even this far. And yet your journey is far from over.
And it's mostly friendly at this point, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Essentially what he's saying is, you know, no one's been this way for a while. You know, I've been waiting, and ask you some questions. You know, do you want to shed the curse? Do you want to accept your fate? Or have you already given up? And then really kind of one of the key pieces of dialogue, he says that there are two paths: inherit the order of the world or destroy it, which at first sounds like a real classic Souls light dark dichotomy. But as we find out as this quest line progresses, that's not what it is. Similar to our opening, like it is, he believes he'll vote for a third party. So.
Yeah, and you know, this is the Scholar. He doesn't call himself, you know, such at this point. You know, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of somebody who is coming to this, you know, fresh for the first time, right? Like, you know, from this point forward, this is going to be the version of Dark Souls 2 that people play. You know, unless they're just playing it off of the disc, which, you know, what are you, a caveman? And you know, trying to find it here. Like, it's worth noting that this happens right when the game goes from being, you know, wide open and non-linear to being the more driven, narrow focused on the path, right? He tells you, you know, to go seek Vendrick. He's like a lot of other NPCs at this point, you know, guiding you down this path towards, you know, a position of greater power where you can, you know, make this decision about whether or not you're going, you know, what you're going to do.
Right. So at this point early on, if this is the only version of Dark Souls you know, and you're not like laser focused on these differences, you probably feel like it's a little bit redundant. You know, like he's kind of just kind of saying mystical nonsense and pointing you towards Vendrick, which everyone has been doing. at this point. And that eventually will pay off. But at first, if this is the only version of Dark Souls you have, I can imagine just thinking like, oh, I get it. He also, the next place he shows up is the Undead Crypt entrance. They've moved the bonfire to the centers to make sure you can't miss him, as opposed to hiding under the stairs. And he's there, large as life, just hanging out.
Largest room. They're large as room. Yeah.
When I don't want to say Aldi is fat, but when he hangs around the Undead Crypt, he really hangs around the Undead Crypt.
I don't want to say that Aldi is fat, but where did that bonfire go? Yeah. But
it's a bonfire. What do you have for me, snack?
So he can only. It seems that he only appears on bonfires. Actually, like I don't know if that's his. Well, I mean, it's borne out in the boss fight at the end of the game that is how he travels, is through flame.
Yes. Yeah. Even though there isn't a bonfire at the end of the game, but he does show up. Yeah, through there. He also kind of has this weird sense of like transcending time and space. Like he literally, we've seen teleporting before. Like we talked about the Emerald Herald and how there's this kind of interpretation with the translation that she's actually kind of projecting a spirit to you, and that the Emerald Herald you run into in the dragon area is the real one. He actually appears and disappears.
Right.
Like there's no, he's definitely traveling through space.
Yeah. And it's worth noting that he hasn't said who he is yet. There's no indication that he was once human. And unlike the Eternal Dragon, which we're going to get to here pretty soon, he is not unstuck in time. He isn't seeing, the regular scale of man as kind of a foggy dream state. Right. So he's got 1 foot in reality, but he is very much not tied to the rules that regular humans have to follow.
Yeah, and some of this kind of comes through in just his presentation and stuff too, like his voice, which cracks into multiple voices and such as he talks.
Four different voices, one of which includes the Emerald Herald's voice.
Yep,
as well.
And one is Shelkior as well. And then there's little bits of Novlon and little bits of the Daughters of Manus. There's a video that kind of splays them out.
Right.
That I'll put in the show notes.
The primary voice, though, the one that you hear, is actually the same voice actor who voiced Oswald of Kareem from the first game.
Yeah. And so his dialogue here is, again, he's just kind of ramping things up. This isn't, where all the cards are kind of on the table, but he's complicating the plot here.
Once the Lord of Light banished dark and all that stemmed from humanity. And men assumed a fleeting form. These are the roots of our world. Men are props in the stage of life, and no matter how tender, how exquisite, the lie will remain a lie.
And he talks a little bit about, man and their relationship to life. Right. Like what is your drive or want or desire?
Life is brilliant, beautiful, it enchants us to the point of obsession. Yeah. One man lost his body and lingered on as a head.
Right, and he references that. He references the what is it? The Jabba the Hutt monster. Choosing the terms of love.
Yeah. Well, I read that as the prince and princess from the Belfries.
Oh, well, I was thinking. Yeah, but those guys aren't really around anymore.
I suppose.
Like that's why I was thinking of it as why am I forgetting that guy's name? Who's that monster?
The covetous demon.
Who's that monster?
Who's that monster?
The covetous demon. But yeah, I mean, it could be any number of love obsessed fools. And then he starts talking about Gwyn.
Yeah. He talks about how lords of light banished dark, and that all that stemmed from humanity. And really, this is him kind of reiterating what Kath said in the first game. Right.
Yeah. To a degree, like this idea that Gwyn, in extending this age of light, is actually robbing man of this age of dark. And he talks about contrasting with the first paragraph. Men are props in the stage of life, and no matter how tender and how exquisite, a lie will remain a lie. Right. It is, yes, it is nice when the fire is going and everything is fine, but it's false. And it's not the way that things should be.
Right. So he is a red pillar.
Yes. Yeah. He's a man going his own way. And it is in the end, like he is less Kathy.
Right.
He is the alternate. Yeah, he's Kathy from accounting, not Kathy from accounts payable. But he is he is the alternate path. So he's Kath in that respect. But what's interesting about what he does with the story is, and what kind of plays with Dark Souls, or what Dark Souls 2 kind of expresses anyway, is that there was not as big a difference between Kath and Frampt as we maybe thought.
Right. Whereas this is completely different.
This is Ross Perot. Like this is Nader.
Yeah. Again, continuing the theme.
Yes.
And, it's weird because this game is so obsessed with thrones and monarchy and such. He's not searching for the next monarch like Kath was. Kath was looking for the Dark Lord, somebody who would embrace the Dark Soul and usher in this, age of humanity and therefore dark as well, in order to kind of spread this, corruption of the abyss, depending on how you believe the endings kind of shake out. Aldea, sorry, the scholar has. I suppose we can say
he's Aldea.
Yeah, he's Aldea, and he reveals that pretty soon here. Aldea has no interest in that. He's more interested in truth, or what he perceives to be truth, as like what the resting state of humanity ought to be, or like what transcendence is, how to break this cycle, or how to ultimately cure humanity of this.
Yes, yeah, and he's a scholar. Like he's interested in the truth. And this, kind of makes sense with what we've learned. Like, it is indirect, and it is not what probably a lot of people were thinking you were going to get, but this actually does make a lot of things kind of make sense, as far as other NPCs and what we've been told,
right.
So far and what we've seen. Like, when it's interesting, I never considered before you said it, the idea that some people are just going to come in and this is their Dark Souls 2, because everything Aldea says has the most impact and makes the most sense, in contrast with having done the ending once, knowing that at one time there was not a choice of an ending.
Right.
Like, this is not going to be as strong with just a choice at the end, I think.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think that it's kind of weird, because even though that does have the most impact, even afterwards, if there is a choice, people are still going to get the most out of it when they go through this again with the most context. The same was true in Dark Souls, given the choice that was that was there. Although that choice was less signposted if you didn't go through the crazy hidden path to.
That's the thing, is like this isn't hidden at all.
Right.
Like you have to run into this. So like you're always going to have that. Like as kind of a, like, you've seen what the game is on first blush, and now you get it on second blush. Like that makes sense. This is always going to be the first blush.
Right.
Which, for me, it had a large impact on me, because I'd spent a lot of time studying the game as it existed before, but probably less so in the future.
Right. Yeah, but this is kind of continuing this kind of trend in the series of characters making their case to you, and you deciding which is the most persuasive, right? Taking the timeline of the game into account here, right after this, you're going to meet Grave Warden Agdane, who tells you pretty much the same thing, right? Except his darkness, or his version of what he is pursuing instead of light, also stands in contrast to what Gwyn does. He even, this is one of the few NPCs who refers explicitly to what Gwyn says, or, whatever he did. How queer that you go on never separating truth from fiction, talking about, Gwyn's efforts. But his dark is one that is more aligned with Nito, the actual oblivion of death, as opposed to, this apotheosis of humanity, right?
Right.
Yeah. And then the other kind of persuasive voice, that was the only voice that had any real, sway over you before, was the Emerald Herald, with her pretty much admitting to taking advantage of your hallowed state to guide you and put you in a position to use you as a pawn against Nishandra, and her claiming the power of the throne for herself.
Right. And then also, we haven't run into him yet, but when you start talking to Vendrick as well, like he has a similar kind of place. And all those options, in the earlier section where Aldea says, inherit the order of the world or destroy it, these are all people who are supporting an order of the world as it is right now. Like, they don't, if you go and recreate this age of fire or recreate this age of man or plunge us into the dark. Like that is something that happens all the time because it's Dark Souls and it keeps happening in these kingdoms. That's the order of the world. And it is what Aldia is trying to maneuver you into is saying, hey, you don't have to actually do that if you don't want to.
Yeah, step away and I don't know, step away and well, let's talk about that in the ending because I'm not quite sure what happens afterwards. I don't think anybody is. It's not super clear.
And I think that's intentional.
Well, yeah, that's the point.
Yeah.
We should say that this is Alva as heck. Oh, sorry, Alva. Who's the Cheshire cat?
Alvia.
Yeah. This is Alvia as heck because in most of his dialogues, it gives you a yes or no question. Will you throw off the yoke? Will you destroy the established order? It's yes or no. And if you want to see this new ending, if you want to get this new boss fight, you always answer yes.
Yes, and it doesn't always sound, it's not necessarily intuitive. So he's not manipulating you to be a king to actually take over the land. He does say that there is like a greatness that is required of you before you can actually make this choice to kind of throw things out.
Right. To even stand at the foot of the throne and decide whether or not to keep it. If you answer, regardless of what you answer here, he kind of throws some shade at Vendrick by saying, he is a near true monarch. Right.
Yes.
He got right to the finish line, but he fell down at the 99-yard line.
Yeah, he chickened out.
Yeah, sports.
And essentially that bears out with what we've seen. Like he kind of ran and hid himself in a cave.
Yeah, he ran because this evil force of the abyss was right behind him, waiting to strike and turn this against the world, to corrupt it and to take the power for her own. Right. So there were forces conspiring, and it remains to be seen whether or not Aldia is actually an agent of the abyss, like the Daughters of Manus were, which we have no reason to believe.
Yeah. I don't think so.
No.
Like I don't. Yeah. The so next is his appearances was my favorite for so many reasons. When you run into him in the Dragon's Shrine. One, because when you light the bonfire, he just knocks you on your butt.
Yep.
And two, it's like mini Aldia. Like he's like this little guy. He can be a big guy or a little guy. I love it. It's super, super cute.
He's got a super high voice.
Yeah.
Young Hollow, how you grapple without falter this dreadfully twisted world.
Like he's adorable. Yeah. I want a little Aldia plush.
But it just suddenly gets bigger.
Yeah, and just teleports around the room.
Yeah.
Or like I go to the bathroom and I turn around and it's just there on the floor. Young Gary, like, ugh. Do you urinate or defecate, or do you throw out the established order? You want me to puke?
Is that
come in the toilet? What do you want? Yeah. What do you want me to do? Number 3 or 4? I can't just do it like the refractory period, Aldia.
I can only vomit so many times in a day.
I know. Jesus Christ, buddy.
I never thought of this, but all these euphemisms for the toilet kind of turn going into the bathroom like ordering off of the extra value menu. I'll take a number 1 extra large. It's been a while.
It's been a while.
Yeah. Yeah. But this is where he's kind of coming unhinged and revealing a lot of his kind of personal philosophy. Right. And making a very strong case for, what he believes about this order being the yoke and about, these. It's pretty poetic. This dialogue is pretty great.
All men trust fully the illusion of life. But is this so wrong? A construction, a facade, and yet a world full of warmth and resplendence. Young Hollow, are you intent on shattering the yoke? Spoiling this wonderful falsehood?
Yeah. It should be said in just kind of a generality. Like the writing on Aldia and the voice acting on Aldia is some of my favorite in the game. Like it is. I think it's poetic, and his delivery is spot on. Like it's really good. It has the weird kind of inflections and beats that make it not kind of generic gravitas.
Yeah.
There's like a lilting kind of curious or mocking tone.
Kind of condescending a little bit.
Yeah, to some of the things he says. Like it's really, really fully fleshed out.
Yeah.
I really dig it.
He's kind of being a sophist here too. Like he is creating a path that he is leading you down. right? Like this is this is persuasion, but of a very heavy-handed. All men trust fully the illusion of life, but is this so wrong? Disingenuous question. A construction, a facade, and yet a world full of warmth and resplendence. Young Hollow, are you intent on shattering the yoke, spoiling this wonderful falsehood?
Yeah, it's like sarcastic.
Yeah,
it's a rhetorical question. Asking you this, and it's interesting because it comes after the Dragon Shrine, which is this huge, after the Dragon Shrine and Aldea's Keep, right? So it's like after this horror show and this very like this one of the darkest areas in the game thematically, right. And then one of the maybe more beautifully visually striking areas of the game, but also
Dragon's Area, yeah.
Yeah, the Dragon's Area, which is not symbolizing. It is not something good. Like it is not, this is not a bunch of natural dragons having fun, partying and hanging out. Like this is, we have that caged dragon that was created like right before that. Like there is this implication that there is something going on with this area as well, where these things are being bred. So it's the fact that it comes after this, and it's him saying it gave me like Demon Souls feelings, of like, hey, is this fucking worth it? Like, did you see that pile of big dead giants?
All the shit that I did, is this worth it?
Yeah.
Well, no, dog, you're the one who did all this. Like, you were trying to, if you just went with it, it would have been fine.
Well, but at this point, you've also gone through lots of other shit too.
Yeah, that's true.
Like Black Gulch and seen the kind of horrors of the world. It's kind of punctuated with this nadir of grossness.
Yeah, and like this nadir of grossness that to be more eloquent with that is
Thank
all.
you.
Sorry,
thank you.
No, not more than you.
That.
No, not more eloquent than you. More eloquent than what I just said before. Oh. This nadir of grossness that is all the result of him trying to cure man of this thing that caused the rest of that evil that you saw.
Yes.
Right. Like, it can't be forgotten that Aldea's Keep and then this as an extension of his laboratory and even up to where that eternal dragon sits is all, him trying to do stuff to figure out a way to cure the curse or get around it or to use the Emerald Herald's world to cozen fate. Right.
Which we haven't done. Which has not been successful. So all this horrible shit has happened in pursuit of trying to fix this thing, and it has failed. And at this point, if you played through the game once and gone through the DLCs and such, you could very well have the crowns, and found the fabled cure that they're supposed to have in Drang Lake, and it's not a cure at all. It is hopelessness after hopelessness of trying to fix this system that doesn't work.
Yeah.
So he asks you, are you intent on shattering the yoke? It's a yes or no question, and this is where he reveals that he's Aldea.
Right.
And he lets you know, like, he tried to shed the yoke of fate, but failed, and now he wants an answer. So seek the throne, and seek light, dark, and what lies beyond, and we'll see what happens.
Right. So bed, bath, beyond. Like what
Yes.
what is beyond
bed.
the binary? Seek beyond. Yeah. So again, this is the third way. Even beyond what we've seen. So the lighting the flame, Nashandra's corruption of it, and then just leaving everything to die.
Right. So you have to defeat Vendrick for him to show up. Like, he wants you to get vengeance on his stupid brother. And he actually shows up, interestingly, and I did not expect this whatsoever, after you fight Nashandra.
Right.
Which could make this a triple boss fight.
Triple kind of difficult boss fight. Like, don't forget, you also have the Keeper and the Watcher, or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the Throne Watcher and Defender. Then Nashandra. Then Aldea. And he pops up with, again, some of my favorite dialogue in the game, which you should cut in. I was going to say it, but you should just cut it in.
Many monarchs have come and gone. One drowned in poison, another succumbed to flame. Still another slumbers in the realm of ice. Not one of them stood here, as you do now. You, conqueror of adversities. Give us your answer.
The delivery on the, like, where he says, like, you conqueror of adversities, give us your answer. Like, the way he, like, says that is just very emphatic and emotional. Really dig it.
Like, he is waiting for you here. He is waiting for you to kind of help him.
Yeah.
Right?
Like,
Like,
you're the
he can't
first
do
person
this.
who did it. Like he goes, many monarchs have come and gone. And he describes all the other kings and stuff, but you've done it. Vendrick didn't get here. None of those people, you're here. Like, you can do it.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? And then either as a test or because, he at this point is so overwhelmed with this, making this choice, or because he truly believes it doesn't matter, he fights you.
Yeah, and this ushers in a really, really good boss fight.
Yeah, a proper ending boss fight for the game, like a better fight than the Chandra fight. Yeah. And it has that kind of like sad tone to it, which I really dig, between the kind of music and everything we've learned of LD up until this point.
Yeah, like, so he is so corrupted. He's so far gone. Like, it's not just his appearance, but kind of his mental makeup and everything as well. Like, I love the idea of this guy who has even gone to the depths of experimenting on himself. Like, he has tried to walk this before and has failed and ended up warped and beyond what could even be called human. Right?
Yeah, and people don't die anymore.
Right.
And this is what happens if you are of Aldia's character, and you have unlimited time to experiment on yourself and you can't die. Like, you're going to end up as this kind of broken.
And outside of the stuff that happens in the Crown of the Ivory King, this is really the only the only manifestation of chaos, right? Of the witch, of this kind of force of nature that was so prominent in Dark Souls 1. The Lost Sinner and her eye bug aside, right?
Right. And you get the sense like this is kind of what happens when you are trying to manipulate life, which is what he was doing.
Yeah, and that's what the bed of chaos is too.
Yeah,
right.
Yep.
It is life unchecked.
Yeah. So that is why he has grown these branches and such. The fight doesn't have. I mean, it's a really good fight. It's not super gimmicky. There's not a whole lot to it. Like, he teleports around. He's got these kind of fireball attacks that you can dodge, and he can send branches your way,
right,
up from the ground, and it's really just about learning the patterns and dodging through.
Yeah, the tricky part is that he is only vulnerable when he is not engulfed in flame. So if he's posted up and on fire, he'll be attacking you from a distance, and you really just have to wait for him to teleport, and he leaves himself open for just a very small amount of time. And this becomes a little bit of an endurance test. At least it was for me. Like, I had to use far more recovery items. Like, I was digging deep into the pockets in order to kind of keep myself going.
Rogue water. Rouge water, yeah.
I like rogue water better.
Yeah. Me too. Like, he has a lot of HP. And he's also, even he has lots of resistance. Like, during any time where he is bound up in flame, even if you try to attack him from a distance, you don't do very much damage. Yeah. It is an endurance test. Right. But it feels fair. Like, you eventually can get to the point with this guy where you don't really get hit. The branches that come from the ground, you can actually block those. If you have a 100% physical shield,
right,
it's physical damage, and really just have to learn about how to dodge his fireballs, which is they're similar to that Forbidden Sun thing, which I think is a sorcery that Aldia created, or a pyromancy.
Yep, pyromancy. It was developed by Aldia. Pyromancy developed in Aldean rites. What could possibly justify such excessive destructive power? In all likelihood, the madmen of Aldia never even questioned the need.
Yeah. Yeah, so he's using the company brand.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's like Jurassic Park.
Yeah,
exactly. They never stop to ask if they should.
Yeah.
Man, that big one, that massive fireball. Until I upgraded the Rebel shield and infused it with fire, I could not. That was instant death.
Yeah, it does huge damage. You can actually dodge it, but it just requires really precise timing.
Yeah.
Which ultimately I ended up doing, but it took me this took me a bunch of tries. Yeah. Mercifully, this just becomes a fog wall and you can summon again for it, and you don't have to fight everybody again or anything like that. Or it's not like you just get one chance.
Okay, he kills you, and then not only do you have to fight all 3 of the bosses in a row again, every time you die after that, it adds another boss from the rest of the game in front of it, and it just queues up until it's a Mega Man boss rush.
That'd be awesome. Like I would play a Dark Souls boss rush, or I'd watch somebody else do it.
Well, yeah.
I'd want it to exist. Yeah. So after you beat him, you don't get anything.
Right.
Like you don't get his soul, you don't get a soul reward, you don't get an item.
Are we going to talk about the music?
Oh yeah. I mentioned it just being a little bit sad, but we didn't say specifics.
Yeah. So this feels a little bit like a deranged version of Gwyn's theme. Actually, you have a very sad but dissonant piano that is a couple of keys off from this from this symphonic, from the string line that's going on behind it. And this is, by God, one of my favorite tracks in the game.
It's really good. Yeah. I don't have anything to add to that. It sounds great.
Yeah.
It is a good one.
Yeah, but you don't get anything. So unlike the Nashandra, who was going to carry you over to the next game with some souls to just to get you started, like a down payment on your soul house in Majula.
Yeah. A soul dowry.
Yeah. And you're left with a choice.
Yeah. So this is, and the original choice is still open to you. We talked about the Throne of Want before. Yeah. You can go, the giants will bow down. You can go into the throne, and we don't know what happens.
Right.
And forever, that was the ending of Dark Souls 2. It's
still incredibly ambiguous, even if you go that way.
And the reason it's ambiguous, like what I buy is that it doesn't actually matter. Like the fact that, and this is a Vadi thing that he believes in really strongly, but I think he's right on in this, is that the mere existence of Dark Souls 2 kind of means that the ending of Dark Souls 1 doesn't matter that much. Like what you do, because it's this cycle, right? Like you plunge things into dark, eventually it's going to become light. A fading ember is the natural state of the world. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah, a fading ember can still start a new flame. Yeah,
exactly. It doesn't, no matter what you did in the original version of the ending of Dark Souls 2, it had the potential to start back up again. It could happen. But if you choose not to do that, and you leave the way you came in, you get the third ending.
I want to camp out just a little bit on kind of the peril of this that kind of rests with the initial ending. So in both cases, either in Dark Souls 1 or here, the abyss was the threat, right? This kind of creeping corruption that was going to take over everything. The same thing is here. Manus has come back as these daughters of chaos who are putting themselves close to power in order to kind of gain control of the flame for itself. So that ultimate fate of like the ending that would matter and actually would cause far more harm to the world is still averted, right? Nashandra's gone, all the other ones are gone, and so this kind of sets up this third ending, the third way, as actually not really being the ultimate evil. This isn't like embracing the abyss with Kath, right?
Yeah, because if you embrace the abyss with Kath, Dark Souls 2 still happens,
right?
Like this takes the teeth out of the abyss as an ending option, I feel like, because if you had done that, and keep in mind, remember that like Nashandra wants you to get wants to get to the throne as well. So like if in the fictional version of the game where you died in Nashandra and because you've cleared the path and she just goes into it, whatever she does in there, you could have potentially done in there as well. So like this again, it takes a lot of teeth out of the abyss. The abyss is very unpleasant while it's going on, but it's not permanent. So like there isn't an ultimate evil. Like there's such a thing can't exist. It is Dark Souls 2 again, or it is, we don't know.
Right.
Which plays in with the kind of meta contextual stuff of the first one, where like the way to end is to stop playing because no matter what you do, Dark Souls happens again.
Right. Yeah. Or the meta contextual one of this, which is Dark Souls 2 just happens again.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, exactly. And it does happen again, even if you choose this third option. I would have loved if there wasn't a new game plus when you chose this. I think that would have been perfect. I could see people being really pissed if they weren't expecting it, but I think that would have been perfect.
Yeah. So you get the third ending. You get not the third ending, the second ending.
Yes.
The alternate, the third way, rather. By just like in Dark Souls 1, you leave the room. It's a fog gate that's up. I forget if there's like any kind of call out that says, "Hey, stand here and press so and so to activate this."
No, there's just a fog gate. to get out. But as opposed to Dark Souls 1, where like you're greeted by this, quorum of serpents who are going to worship you as this Dark Lord, and there's just nothing there.
Right.
And the Aldea dialogue, which is, Aldea still talking to you, which makes me think that he does transcend time and space. His dialogue here is really telling.
There is no path beyond the scope of light, beyond the reach of dark. What could possibly await us? And yet we seek it insatiably. Such is our fate.
Beyond the scope of light, beyond the reach of dark, what could await us? And it's actually a question.
Right.
Like, it's not a rhetorical question. We don't know. But whatever that is, we seek it. And that is actually our fate. That was the thing that was interrupted by starting the cycle, by the dark sign coming along, by, this becoming this light, dark thing.
Yeah. To actually, break off of the track, not go in circles anymore and, go to where there is no path.
Yep.
Yeah. And this does mirror the dark ending of Dark Souls 1, at least in composition, right? You're walking up the path that led you down to the Throne of Want, and these cairns, or these the torches and braziers on either side are going out. Whereas in Dark Souls 1, you had this this quorum of serpents rising up to meet you as you walked along.
Yes.
Right. So
it's a little bit of an undoing of that.
It's visually the same, and it's evoking a little bit of the same feel, but it's a little bit more kind of transcendent.
Yeah, the note, it feels like the note that it ends on dialogue wise is so much more like so much less gamey than like, because I looked and I watched the endings of Dark Souls 1 again, and the serpents are like, we are ready to serve you, our Dark Lord. And their teeth are clamping together and stuff, and like, oh, you're going to be a Dark Lord, blah, blah, blah. And that sounds very like, it sounds like a video game because you're still in a video game. Because you're still, right, you're still in like that kind of world.
Yeah.
This, with its like actual ambiguity, like we don't play by those rules anymore. We don't know that it's not you're going to go off and seek greater glory or adventure. Like, it's literally, we don't know what happens when you turn off the system.
Right. Yeah, and it's comforting that there's still a constant here, that this that the theme still holds, right? Like even down to the last line, what could possibly await us, and yet we seek it insatiably.
Yep.
Right. Still going into one, still into seeking, still into seek, seek darkness, seek the throne, seek the monarch, seek I don't know what the fuck, right?
Well, because seek a thing that's not a foregone conclusion.
Well, yeah.
Like that.
I guess that's what I mean. I'm not saying I don't know what the fuck, but like everybody's saying, the person saying seek. Well, I can't tell you what to seek because this hasn't been written yet.
Because we haven't found it yet.
Yeah.
Like, that's why look for something you've already found. That's what Aldea is saying. Like, we know what happens with this. Like, listen, I've studied this shit. I've looked at, like, I've studied Gwyn. I know what happens to I know what happened to Ilium Lois. I know what happened to Shulva. Like, I know what happens. Like, you're not going to learn anything by going down that path.
Right. Like,
go find this new thing. And that's cool. Like, that is very satisfying to me as an ending of Dark Souls. Like, I feel like this is the good ending of Dark Souls 2. The other ending is great. Like, it is fine, and there is value. And I think that Aldea even kind of plays lip service this value of like, yeah, it's a lie. It is really nice though. Like, there is something to it. Like, I'm one of those people that that one guy in the Matrix, like, I'm sympathetic to that guy who just wants to eat steak all the time in the Matrix, like little fat mustache man who likes steak. Yeah, I can dig it. Like, I would probably dig that. But it is, I also can dig being a Neo and pumping your way out and flying and woeing.
flying and doing Superman Goku fights.
Yes.
Yeah. And I in the past, when we've either talked about Dark Souls 1 or Demon Souls, I've kind of been of the mind that all that we're seeing is a very small window when the flame is about to go out, and we are seeing just like the worst of what happens, as things kind of draw to a close before they're kind of renewed. It's the you burn the forest so that better stuff might grow after it. Right. So I think that I'm amenable to Mr. Cypher as it were in that case, and the other blue pillars because of that. But I'm more kind of willing to accept this as the good ending of Dark Souls 2, strictly because there isn't an element of corruption, kind of associated with it. It's not nihilistic in a way, like in a way that kind of the other ones were, right? And even in the dark, oppressive tone of everything else, I wasn't willing to accept that as being kind of like part and parcel of that, because it disregarded the fact that there is an upside to the cycle, right? This I'm down with the ambiguity, and I'm down with the fact that Aldia is somebody who has seen everything before to a certain extent, and looked and explored and saw what happened when you tried to play within the rules, what happens when you break out of it. And so this is hopeful in a way that the other quote unquote bad endings were not.
It's hopeful in a way that, like, if the other bad endings, like the reason, specifically the Demon Souls one, the reason why that appealed to me was the idea of this kind of mercy killing of it. The Dark Souls one, I was a little bit more ambivalent about, but whereas that's kind of a mercy killing, kind of thing, that would cause suffering in the short term, oblivion in the medium term, and eventually would just become Dark Souls again. This actually does have, the hope of the mystery box. Like, this is the pig in the poke.
It's curtain number 3.
Yeah. Whereas curtain number 1 is like, I'm going to hug you and then stab you. And curtain number 2 is I'm going to stab you and then hug you. And then this is like, maybe you won't get stabbed.
Maybe it's all hugs.
Yeah, maybe it's all hugs. We don't know yet.
Yeah.
Did you know, this is a tangent, did you know at the end of one of the Matrix video games, you fight a gigantic mecha Mr. Smith called Mecha Smith that takes a pair of sunglasses off of a billboard and puts them on?
Yes, and also that boss fight is introduced by pixelated versions of the Wachowskis.
Oh,
saying, hey, you know what? We're really sorry about how dumb this is. Like, it's one of the most bizarre cutscenes you're ever going to see in a game.
Yeah, so somebody pointed that out on SA, and I was just like, this is the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Like, this is fucking strange. Yeah, the Matrixes are bad.
I know.
The first one's okay. After that, they're all garbage. They're the worst fucking movies. But yeah, it is hopeful, or at the very least, true.
Yeah, exactly. Like the true thing, hopefulness is just mine. I've kind of come to grips over the course of the show that I'm a little bit of a Pollyanna, and like I'm fine owning that, even with the downsides of that. But that truth side of it is one that definitely, rings true. To me, in a way that makes me willing to accept it, and kind of addresses, it embraces the theme of want while kind of taking and giving a little bit of resolution to the theme of the cycle, and drawing some kind of satisfaction out of that construct that is kind of made to deny you of satisfaction, right? Deny you of any kind of like finality or answer or conclusion.
It's want in a pure sense. Like it's want for like this return to a natural order, and then also want for the unknown. Once you know that, like, yes, you can want, the balm or the cauterization. Yeah. But again, it doesn't matter. Yeah. Like it nullifies that want before. It is saying, like, all that want that you felt before, like, it does ultimately, on the grand scheme of things, isn't really an option at all. Yeah. Like, isn't really a thing.
So the thing that kind of doesn't sit right with me about this, though, just as we consider, is all of Aldia's kind of ranting about the true form of man, and the fact that the way we look, or the way that man in the Dark Souls universe looks when the flame is up, is a transient form that is a line of promise. So we are kind of consigning the race to be monsters and people who are walking around shambling, towards whatever light is available.
Or like, so again, like the Vadi video that he has on this is interesting, because he talks about, man getting kind of disrupted into this cycle. But we don't actually know what was next for man. Like, it was supposed to go, age of nothing, age of fire, age of dark, and then we don't know. Right. And then Gwyn just kind of set us up in this loop. So something could have happened after the age of dark. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily mean we're going back to hollows, hanging around in the ashes, looking for souls
and grasping. Yeah.
Like, it could be. It could be anything. It's just, we've just been a record skipping for all of eternity, essentially.
Yeah, that's kind of funny, because if you consider that the gods of the first pantheon were creatures who embraced these souls from the flames and then rose above and became something other than man. Right. By virtue of the power that they held, and kind of keeping everybody else in this, ever rotating record skip kind of state. who knows what the gods actually stole from them in terms of, the next evolution of man beyond that. So giving them a false, shadowed version of the greatness that these souls or whatever power was hidden after the Age of Dragons and the stone and scales and whatnot, when everything was Ash Lake, taking it all for themselves and giving scraps in order to keep them in a very dim cycle that had a very tight loop. Who knows if it would have taken off and become even brighter, or a much wider loop that got further away from kind of the base, again, clutching and grasping.
Yep. Yeah. It is, even if it, like, if it were just me, like, I would probably blue pill it like crazy, but thematically, I like the red pill ending of this. And I hate saying nice things about red pill. That has like one of the worst connotations. Like,
right. Today it does.
Today it used to be fine. And now it's like saying logic or ethics. Like, it is it is a word that I don't like anymore.
Yeah.
But in this situation, I like the red pill ending of Dark Souls 2. Mm-hmm. So you heard it here first. Like the Red Pillar's Guide to Dark Souls 2.
And we get heat for dropping that stuff into the middle of a show. This actually is appropriate. We are using that in the
we're actually just using the term.
Yep.
Yeah.
So in case anybody is reading more into that than they ought to, that is what we're doing.
Yeah, you oughtn't.
Yeah.
And that's Dark Souls 2, and that is in a way, like, I feel like the DLCs leading up to this addressed a lot of story stuff, but then a lot of the gameplay problems I had, and this makes the ending square, at least. Like the journey up here is still messy in a lot of ways, and any of the kind of complaints or concerns we had throughout the season, most of them still stand. Right. But this does a really good job of making it feel like a more complete product, I think.
Right. And, the fact that these extra characters are, this extra character and this extra wrinkle to the story is added right around the time when we start getting away from individual stories of these kingdoms and into, the messy part of the story, which is Vendrick's quest and ultimate end goal. Adding this duality does actually, bring a little bit more interest to that back half, and a little bit more texture to, what the aims of this whole kingdom were.
In a weird way, it's very impressive to me. Mm-hmm. Like, I wonder, what went on in the studio or the creators for this, because if I was just handed Dark Souls 2 and was said, like, hey, you get to add one NPC that kind of makes this ending feel right. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know if I could have come up with this, as a thing, but it feels like it fits. Yep. To me, and just kind of works. Like, it is weirdly impressive.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely something that you can tell they had the benefit of time and scope. To do, right? They had a little bit of separation. If you assume that they started developing it sometime less than a year after the thing came out, probably like 6 months later, they probably had the ability to say, okay, we came up with a bunch of really cool ideas, but there's nothing to connect them, there's nothing to bring them closer. This content didn't do as much as I wanted to in order to bring those pieces closer together or add more in between. But they went back and rewrote the stuff that was furthest apart, or found opportunities to bring it in and bring that clarity. And so this is a very ambitious retrofit, because they managed to fix problems without creating any new ones. At least that I can see, having had like a while to think about it. Like, we've been sitting on this for about a month. Yeah,
I agree. Those aren't the only things that the patch added. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing that patch added. And there are tons of little things like, when you're looking at your teleport screen, the areas with the best multiplayer are highlighted, and rusted coins are better now.
What
I'm sure somebody rusted coins.
Yeah,
they increase your item find.
Oh, cool.
And they're stronger now. It's like the second line on the patch notes.
Oh, I suppose,
Finally. No, I wasn't saying it to to criticize you. I was saying, like, why is that given such marquee billing as something that's so inconsequential?
Yeah. Yeah. The other big thing was the gape ring.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which gives you the ability to not have your souls contribute to your soul memory, and lets you kind of stay still and control your multiplayer experience.
Yes, and we're not multiplayer guys. We've said it before. Mm-hmm. The reaction to the gape ring has been mixed from what I've seen. There's a video I'll put in the show notes of a guy who kind of like criticizes the Dark Souls 2 multiplayer matchmaking system, and it's pretty compelling, I think. And he has a real problem with the Agape Ring. I honestly haven't fucked with it. I haven't even found it, just because I knew I wasn't gonna, like controlling my multiplayer experience was never really a thing in Dark Souls 2 because I just dabbled in it. So
it's weird that mechanic or the way that they implemented it is kind of the same thing as being egg burdened.
Yeah.
Where it just
it's very similar.
Sap souls that otherwise would have gone to you.
Yeah. It's that's why we have Jeremy around. So Jeremy can say how good the Agape Ring is, whereas we cannot.
Right. And there are some item descriptions that are not quite as noteworthy, like, the Iron Key. They added a line at the end of that said the Iron Door 2 must be somewhere far away, which that doesn't follow because they talked about in the same item description about how the Iron Keep was stripped of all of its valuable iron. So did they take the door and move it to the
and then reinstall it? Like we can melt this down for armor, but fuck it.
Yeah, we got hey, free door.
No one's gonna turn on a free door. There's some of the item descriptions are actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Though, and some of them I've felt really good about, the ones that kind of vindicated some things that we've said on the show. That popped up a couple times.
Yeah,
which I'm happy about.
So I've made some notes of the ones that have changed, the most substantially, and we can kind of take a bit of a tour through this. If you would like. So to lead stuff off, there are a bunch of items that relate to the Children of Manus that have all been updated to include, Nashandra's sisters, right?
Yes.
And there's a certain stripe of the updates that were just done to reconcile things that were probably written before the DLCs were developed, in order to reconcile them.
Yes. Yep. We find out what Vendrick was getting, why he attacked the giants from the Giant Warrior Club.
Yeah. Which is he was going after their souls at Nashandra's bequest.
Yes.
Not bequest, behest. There we go.
Yep. So that was a huge question mark that we had for the entire season.
Which a little bit underwhelming, right? We thought it was the Lord Vessel. We thought it was some kind of artifact. Like, no, these actually are just really powerful souls, and that is how you advance in power, is to kill powerful things. So, he's like us, farming for souls.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, it does make sense when you consider that he was essentially, kind of the person before you, like doing this thing. Like he vanquished the four whatevers, right? Like, isn't there design
there's something about that. He killed whatever old ones were there before you, or were there before the ones you killed.
Yeah. So he was, like the Land of the Giants was the DLC for him, and he went over there to fight them there. Yeah.
Yeah. The Giants' kinship, they changed that, not too appreciably. They kind of remove the mention of the throne and make it more about the fire, which makes it a little bit of a companion piece to the Fated Ember in terms of being a thesis for the game. The flames roar, but will soon begin to fade, and only a worthy heir may burnish their light. What is it truly the claimant of the throne could desire? Yeah.
Yep. We weren't the only people to do this, but I'm happy that's true. That the soul of the last giant and the giant lord, that they were the same person, and that's confirmed. They say that the giant lord was defeated and sealed up beneath the keep to keep him at bay. And when the king brought the giants back as hostages to Drang Lake, this was actually the turn in his personality to him kind of becoming a bit of a shit heel.
Yeah, this was his. I'm sure there's a Shakespeare reference. It was Macbeth killing so and so, and finally succumbing to the ghosts and the madness of the witches. Right? Yep. Very Shakespearean. They make some changes to the Flexile Sentry and the Bastille that are kind of baffling to me.
It only feels like it makes sense. Yeah, like all the stuff. So essentially, the whole thing was that the Flexile Sentry and the Pirate Bay, there are sorcerers there.
Right.
Essentially.
Yeah. So when Vendrick started seeing signs of the curse everywhere, he decided to start persecuting anybody with a magical aptitude. And so that's who he was rounding up through the No Man's Wharf and kind of sending off to the Lost Bastille. But the Flexile Sentry wasn't the one who was watching that passage. No, the Flexile Sentry was loading people up from overcrowded cells and taking them out to be buried alive at sea. Yes,
throwing wizards in the water. It's wizard's tea, Harry. By seeping them shits. And the only thing I can think of is just to make it feel like, oh, this is why Carhillian's here. It's sorcery, but I'm still mad at Carhillian. So it doesn't actually, this does not address my Carhillian rage.
Mad at Carhillian or mad at Strayed?
Carhillian, because he's hanging out in Bungling Bay, or what have you, where the bay where all the sorcerers have been dipped in the water.
Yeah.
Made sorcerer tea.
Why are you mad at Carhillian again? I'm sorry.
I just think he's a bullshit NPC.
Okay.
You can go back to that episode, me complaining about it to Riff, but like I just think he's, there's nothing to him.
Mm-hmm.
He's just sitting cross-legged in the middle of Pirate Bay for no reason.
That's true. Yeah.
Saying like my Carhillion rage sounds like a lot more like it sounds like a great adjective. Like,
Wait, but didn't he come here from Melfia along with what's her name? The wannabe pyromancer?
He did.
Okay.
But then he was just sitting cross-legged in Pirate Bay and for no good reason. And I think this is probably why he was there, but then they don't do anything with his character.
Right.
Yeah, I don't remember everything I complained about Carhillion in that episode.
Yeah.
It's all on the record. You can order a transcript from CBS.com for only $40.
Yeah. Let's see here. I love what they did with Seldora, actually, as revealed through the Seldora set, those clothes, and also the soul of Freya herself, or the Writhing Ruin, or whatever. Mm-hmm. So they bring a little bit of flavor to the people who live in Seldora, as opposed to just the miners or whatever. This was like a really, really rich town. And they decided to, because they wanted even more riches, they decided to start digging up every place they lived in order to get these bright stones, right? Which apparently are fragments of a being that once roamed the entrails of the earth. Who else do we know who might be connected to this? Who had crystals? Oh wait, Seath.
Yeah. So that's satisfying to me. Like I was like, when I way back in the day, I was like, oh man, they're just harvesting Seath's dead body. I was right. They kind of are doing that. Just not in the way that I thought they were. That's pretty cool. We also learned a little bit more about Freya. Freya is not actually the Writhing Ruin, but the current vessel. Freya first took possession of a solitary insect.
The Writhing Ruin first took.
Oh, you're correct. Yes, the
it's
Writhing
Freya's
Ruin.
monster.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. There's a tweet where it was like, no, Frankenstein was actually the name of actually the name of the scientist. The monster is the pedant who points that out, which I'm pretty into.
No, my favorite version of that is either Fart or Drill who tweeted, actually, Bon Jovi is the band. You're thinking of Bon Jovi's monster.
That's pretty good too. Yeah, the Writhing Ruin took possession of the spider that was in the cage, which a lot of people online thought that little broken cage was Duke Seldora's little baby pet spider, and that is true.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is where it starts getting a little bit hazy. Like they added some kind of throwaway details. Like they really, really have it in for Lindelt.
Yeah.
And there's not much more to add there aside from, again, related to Seath, the fact that they worship an Archdrake, and the Archdrake set has a passing resemblance to the Channeler. They add some details about how anybody who goes looking into the crimes that lie behind Lindelt are disappeared most conveniently. So I don't know, like maybe I'm reading a lot into that. I don't know how much there is to back up to it, but boy, does that feel right to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm down with that, and it makes sense with what we know about Lindelt already. Navlan is not actually a demon, but he casts aside his desires to embrace the dark. Is the dark holding a mirror up to the nature of mankind? He is a chaos sorcerer, as he calls himself. Right. So when a lot of people were saying, "Oh, Navlan is Alvia," Navlan is a sentient sorcerer, that could still be true, or sorcery, that could still be true, but he calls himself a chaos sorcerer.
Right. Yeah. And so he didn't just get possessed. He, it may be possessed, but it's more of a force of nature as opposed to kind of a dark rider. Yeah. I skipped over one about Elan. Really, they just kind of clarify. They line up a bunch of stuff with the DLC. The fact that they imply that Elan distanced himself once he became disillusioned with the king's depravity.
Yeah. Which we more or less know, but it's nice to have things in the main game support that. The stuff that references the DLCs, like that, those were the most coherent stories in the game.
Yeah.
And it's telling that not very many items reference those, or any items from the DLCs. None of the items from the DLCs got new item descriptions. I think there might be one or two exceptions, but for the most part, they don't. And that's because they didn't need them.
Melfia, they give a little bit more information about that, but nothing of real consequence. Olenford is still a mystery.
Yep. And Alva and Zuli, there's a little bit more detail about Alva and his search for Saint Sirat, or Sirat? How do you pronounce that?
Saint Sirate sickness.
Sirate? Yes. Yeah. For Saint Sirate sickness.
Yeah.
And is this like a little love story?
Yeah, it's a little love story between them. So the witch tried to find him and corrupt him, and he was unworthy of pursuing his quest and lost hope, but they kind of found a new purpose together, which doesn't serve anything in the macro, but I love those little stories when they pop up.
Yeah, there's a nice little story. Yeah, and I was kind of with the new item descriptions. I was expecting a little bit more. I'm glad they didn't go further. Like they didn't go too far with it, but I wanted them to go a little bit further with it. I think what's there is good. It's still hard. Like if I think about, and if I had made more comprehensive notes, I would know this. But I'm trying to think about like what are the. So here's a question for you, and I'm putting you on the spot. What are the dangling things still in Dark Souls 2? Like, what are the unanswered questions?
So anything related to the other kind of societies that I about said Gwyn, that Vendrick subjugated. So mostly anything to do with the Gurm, the Lion people, stuff kind of related to the pit, the gutter, Black Gulch, anything related to like what's the connection between the Sunken Kingdom and everything else. That's the one that has kind of the weakest connection, I think, to the themes of the rest of the game. So just kind of these smaller little societies, and I think that I think anything that has to do with the way that different hubs might be connected to each other thematically, even beyond the fact that they are all connected to Majula, right?
Yeah. And I think that's probably true, but there's not that much. When I was kind of racking my brain, there wasn't that much of kind of serious import that I felt was still unanswered.
Yeah,
So
even with those misgivings that I kind of half stated there, there's those are all still good self-contained stories. Like that was all the stuff that was strongest about the narrative as it was, presented before. What I would say about the broader work as it remains, and there's still, I think, some story stuff to come to light, at least when they start updating the enemy and item placement. I think that there's, we're going to have to do a little bit of a closer read to whatever the new whole of Dark Souls becomes, with those connections, whatever those things end up saying, is that there are a lot of different voices and kind of like agents within the story that are all running at different purposes. And I don't know if it's, failing on my part to keep them all straight, if there's more to them than we see on the page, if there's less to them than we see on the page. And I think that, it's just going to be time and interpretation that ultimately see how this settles down and, what the single story that they're trying to tell is.
My instinct is that there's a bunch of chaff, like that there is a lot of that kind of stuff that actually is not that important. And a lot of things that kind of cover the same ground, either thematically or directly, kind of narratively, than that as other things do. And they're just kind of in there in the initial Dark Souls 2 writing style that had a lot of kind of stuff thrown at the wall, because it was cool, and is not going to actually bear out.
Something that's crazy about this is that a lot of the item descriptions that they changed actually get rid of the questions. Like that rhetorical style that was present in so many of the descriptions that felt like a conscious choice.
Yeah, which is great because those were annoying. So that's Scholar of the First Sin, the patch version. We'll be back in, a while to at some point between Bloodborne episodes in order to kind of conquer to tackle as conquer in order to conquer the full version. But until then, we have some responses from you guys about this. And then also I just reminded myself of Bloodborne. Those are the two things that just happened. So
Yep. Sorry.
We're very close to Bloodborne.
Yeah, we are. I broke a little bit of my media blackout and I watched one of the trailers.
Oh, buddy. Buddy, what are you doing?
No, it was fine. It was mostly atmosphere. It was cool. It was because I was a person at work was asking why I was going to be out next week, and I was like, here's this thing that I really super care about. Like, I do these podcasts, but he kind of fell out of games, and it was like, man, if I played this game, I would be lost. Not like lost, like I wouldn't know what to do. Like I wouldn't be able to spend time with my family.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of like, here's this thing that I'm super excited about, and I talked with him about why Dark Souls is cool. So.
Yeah, that's always a fun good time. I've only seen the very first trailer for it, so the very first kind of footage of him like walking down a hallway.
You know what? That's the one that I saw. Okay, so I didn't. It was it might have been, if we're talking about the same one, it might have been the E3 one. So we're still good. We're still good.
Oh, great. Yes. Yeah. Because and people like be careful out there.
Ooh, yeah.
Guys, if you're listening to this and you haven't already had it spoiled for you, because people already have their hands on the game, people are spreading shit around. So the internet's a dangerous place right now.
For the 2 or 3 days that this episode will be out, before Bloodborne happens.
Yeah, and we'll be back next week with our first impressions.
Yeah,
which I call it first impressions. There's almost zero chance I won't have beat the game by the next time we record, just because that's all I'm going to do there, or at very least be pretty deep into the end game.
Right.
So they will still be first impressions because these as the one thing that the Dark Souls 2 kind of how it stumbled towards a satisfying conclusion for me really kind of mirrored how I stumbled towards a satisfying read for all these games.
Yeah.
It is an iterative process that requires a lot of kind of patching and going over things.
And to allay,
and
that goes hand in hand. To allay anybody's fears about us rushing through it. To beat it in the first week. That's for planning. Like the read that you get in our individual episodes is a very close, far spread out read.
I'm going to play it twice.
Yeah.
At the very least, I'm going to play it once, and then I'm going to play. I'll probably start a new game plus character, and get a little bit into it. But then I'll have a character that I go through the main thing with as we go through the episodes. But let's talk about your responses to the Scholar of the First Sin patch.
Yeah. So when we put out the call, Facebook collectively responded. Aldia did it.
Yeah, just kind of over and over and over, which is
funny.
Which is true.
Yep.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny and true.
It's funny because it's true.
It's true. Yeah. So a lot of that, and they're right. But there are some other responses. DJ Davis here says via contact.
Via Facebook, sorry. I mistyped that.
It's quite all right. Via Facebook. It seems like From's answer to making Dark Souls 2 a better game is to throw a bunch of stuff at it to see what sticks. Maybe if we keep piling new stuff on top of this mess we originally created, it'll turn into something great. Not quite sure how that's paying off yet. I'm holding off on the new content until I get the new PS4 version. Maybe that'll be the winning combination.
So this is hard because if you've listened to this, you already know that they do square up some of the stuff.
Yeah, I disagree with DJ Davis about so many things.
Me too.
I like that DJ, I like that you are participatory and we don't have to agree about Dark Souls to both be interested in it. But I do feel like you have not given Dark Souls 2 a real fair shake in this stuff. Like, none of the stuff that they and out of all the things to criticize Dark Souls 2 for, like the additional things, which referring to this and the DLCs, these are the last things that I feel like you can criticize it for. Like these were great. Like this is exactly what you should do. And I can't remember if it's on Bonfireside Chat. I think I might have talked about it on Watch Out for Fireballs, but like the idea of like a DLC addressing problems with the main game is not something that we should look down on.
Right.
Like that's great. Like if a company realizes that they didn't do something as well as they could and listens to feedback and then puts out an answer to it, and it does it successfully, that's really to be, in my mind, to be really respected. Like, I don't expect anybody to be perfect out of the gate. I don't have any problem with people showing out, admitting to their mistakes. Like, one of the big examples I always talk about is Dishonored, where, like, the Dishonored DLC has none of the weird character dissonance and like the problems that, like, I love Dishonored, but the problems that came with it being a silent protagonist and the kind of lack of feeling that came from that and stuff. And the DLC answers it really, really well. Like, it's a self-contained, perfect little story, that has more heart and feels a little bit more genuine in that way. That's awesome. Yeah. That's a good use of DLC. I dig it. I don't blame them for not doing it in the first place. Yeah.
Like, the new ending of Mass Effect 3 is pretty good. I also liked the first ending of Mass Effect 3.
Well, you're the only guy who liked that, though, right?
I don't know about the only one. Like, I thought it was fine.
Yeah.
Like,
well, you didn't sign that fucking petition?
No, I didn't sign the petition.
The White House petition?
The only thing that's shitty about them changing the ending to Mass Effect 3 was the circumstances that led them to having to change it.
Yeah.
Or, being pressured to change it. Right? Like, the fact that they got feedback, cool. But the fact that they got such forceful feedback and they were rated the worst company in America over fucking Comcast or Time Warner is a travesty to me.
Have you ever dealt with a fucking 7-hour installation window for Comcast? Because it happens. Like, you think somebody making a video game ending you don't like? Yeah, that stuff that drives me fucking nuts. Gamers are entitled, or they're not entitled. They feel entitled. They are not entitled.
Yeah, but I mean, but even beyond that, this is a wonderful use of the technology. The fact that games can change after the fact and they're not just a sealed thing in a box, that cuts in a lot of different ways. Like, it can suck for somebody who is just jumping into it, and if it's broken out of the box. However, if it can cut two different ways, one of the ways that it cuts is probably pretty good, and that's a way to revise it and admit that you're wrong, and like, humility in a creator is a good thing.
Well, here's the thing: is like any other medium, right? Like, you have something like this too is a product of games as consumer culture as opposed to an art product, because this doesn't happen with books really. Like, a book doesn't come out with like a director's cut or DLC for the books,
except for The Stand.
Well, yeah, exactly. Very rarely. But the thing is books are read for content and story, and all these things are kind of created. The people who are publishing these games don't put budget into paying me and Kole to play through them and analyze where the story is unsatisfying. It'd be awesome if they did, but they don't. So like, them being able to have that maneuverability is important when there's this much, like, this kind of budget on the line and this kind of culture around the medium. It is necessary. It is what's going to happen if you want to have emotionally resonant and satisfying games, while simultaneously having them have ridiculously huge budgets and be this kind of like game boner, 360 no scope, DOS energy, commercial kind of thing as well.
Yeah. It's not an admission of weakness. You don't have to say, haha, look, they admit that it sucks. Well, yes, that's a good thing. If they, there's probably an argument to be made to say, hey, make sure that it's right the first time it comes out. Like, release something that is not a compromised or flawed piece of work.
But that's super naive.
I know, right?
That doesn't square with the real world at all.
Exactly,
Like,
which is where I was going with that.
And I'm not saying DJ is doing this. I'm more arguing with internet posts that I've read by anonymous people right now. But like, if you're making that argument, you've never made a thing. Like, you've never created something, because that's not how creation works. And if it is, you're never going to create something. Like, if you're just laboring around in your basement around Game Maker to make sure something's perfect before it comes out, like, good luck to you. With no feedback and no actual like stress test that comes from releasing something. Like, the best way to create stuff is just to constantly do it and fuck up constantly. Like, was it the extra credits, like the fail better? Fail better. And them trying to fail better at this is admirable.
Right. So, ultimately a better thing comes out at the end. And, if you were dissatisfied with the first thing, I'm really sorry about that. Entertainment is subjective, and that's totally a cool thing. However, it can get better as this is not attrition. This is something rolling around in a rock tumbler. It's scraping up against rough edges until it ultimately comes out smooth and shiny as kind of, if not the best version of the thing that it could have been, a better version of the thing that it could have been.
Like, that's the thing, is like, if you wanted to argue that the original Dark Souls 2 was a lot of things thrown against the wall to see what would stick, I would say that a lot of the side details and kind of story stuff was that. And that's a fair kind of criticism. But I don't get any impression of that from any of the downloadable after content stuff.
Yeah. And the main game, the one that came in the box, was already such a sprawl. Right. Yeah. So to say adding more and more on top of it to the point where, like, outside of the DLC, if we just take the comment to be, talking about either changing, adding this NPC or, changing some of this, changing some of the item descriptions, and even down to like the full re-release, that's a rip and replace. That's not an ad. Like, Aldi is the only new thing, and even that nestles quite nicely into the empty spaces between the stuff that had a dissatisfying void between it and in that first iteration.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed. So again, much of that was not necessarily focused at you, DJ.
Right.
That was just us arguing with a conglomerate of a viewpoint.
Yes.
That some people share to some or all degree.
Yeah.
Or
it was us white knighting.
Yeah, exactly. Or we're just being shill idiots. Like, we're just beta cucks for Dark Souls 2.
Beta cucks. Can I make that a shirt?
Yeah, I would wear it. That's a real red pill MRA internet thing, referring to men who respect women as beta cucks because they're just going to get cheated on. Those fucking idiots. Anywho, so again, don't take that as that offend. We're just expressing ourselves, not necessarily in opposition. I do respectfully disagree with your point.
Yep.
DJ. But also you haven't played them. Like you're just like, I don't know if this will do it, but I bet you it won't. You can also give it a shot. Like we think that it does. If you do and you don't think so, that's great. And if you decide based on what you've already played that you don't want to try, also great.
Yeah. So Emily writes in via contact. Aldia's dialogue suggests that the physical body of man is the result of the Lord of Light banishing the dark. This sounds familiar to me. After the chosen undead defeats Manus in Dark Souls 1, the shards of his splintered body grow into human daughters. So we know that the shards of Manus can form into physical beings. To take that a step further, what of all humanity, Manus included, are shards of the original Dark Soul that formed into physical beings after the dark was banished? We've seen what pure humanity looks like in the universe. Black, intangible, floating, cloud-like voids. I think it is implied that this is humanity's true form, and that being a creature of flesh and blood is just a fascinating illusion that we cling to. Linking the flame grants peace and prolongs the flesh and blood illusion a little longer. Otherwise, we're destined to return to the nebulous dark. What I still struggle with is Aldia's implied third option. Light, dark, or something else entirely. Beyond the scope of light, beyond the reach of dark, what could possibly await us? Aldia asks us to look beyond what has always been presented as the natural order of this universe, the cycle of light and dark. But what's left? Given that Aldia is the scholar of the first sin, would that be chaos? Is chaos the union of dark and fire, or the absence of both? I have no goddamn idea. True to form for the Souls series, this extra content has left me with more questions than answers, but the questioning is so much fun. Love the show and all that other stuff. Thank you for the kind words.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. That's interesting. I don't know about the chronology about the first part of that, with the idea that like the shattering of the dark is what created all men. Because there was something there that was picking up, like, something like a furtive pygmy found the original Dark Soul. So I don't know about the chronology, but it's definitely an interesting idea. And I tend to forget about the natural humanities floating around in the abyss. Yeah, when I think about this stuff, partially because they don't actually figure into Dark Souls 2. There are no humanities as an object. Like that was a narrative conceit, having a humanity exist as an object, an enemy, a quality of something, and as this kind of theme thing in Dark Souls 1 was really, really kind of complicated and confusing in a great way. But I think they jettisoned that in Dark Souls 2, at least in part, to clear that up. Right. And the interpretation, it makes it harder to draw that line between human effigies or humanity in general from Dark Souls 1 to Dark Souls 2.
I guess it breaks down to, one of two things. Do you believe that the human kind of sprites that you see are the quintessence of humanity, or kind of the remains or the remnants, after this? Because at least the opening of Dark Souls 1, however reliable that is, implies that the natural form of humans is, again, those clutching and grasping, zombie-like forms that have no purpose, the hollows, right, who, have lost all hope, in the curse, and just kind of move about without purpose, right? Like that is implied to be the natural form of humanity, as opposed to, these sprites, which are pretty detached from anything else we really see in the actual text of the game.
Yeah. I agreed. But yeah, good thinking. Stuff to think about. And obviously agreed on the third point. I don't know if it is, like has anything to do with chaos or anything like that. I think that kind of theorizing as to what Aldia's third option is, it's not meant to have anything aiming towards it, or anything pointing towards it. I'm not saying that you shouldn't theorize about it. I just don't think there's anything there. Yeah. There's no answer. We're not supposed to have an answer.
Yeah. And that is the fact that nothing is written is what is written.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And what is laid out. You can draw up your own kind of speculations around it, whatever makes you the most satisfied with it. But at that point it really is a blank slate, because you're not drawing on anything that has kind of been presented before.
Yeah. So thanks everybody. We are recording our next episode again as our first impressions episode of Bloodborne. Yeah. After that, we will be hitting the again another solo episode with whatever the tutorial area ends up being in that. I hope it's just an in where everyone tells you about like elemental effects and active time battle. But that's how little I know about Bloodborne, folks.
Active time battle.
Ding, 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 ding. But then after that, we'll have our first episode with a guest, and I think you guys will be into it, and I'll announce that soon.
Mm-hmm. Gary has done a lot of hard work getting some people on board with us, and I think that is going to pay dividends. So I will thank you for the audience, Gary, for everything you've done so far.
You're welcome. Yeah. Happy to do it. If you have things to say, we're not going to have an appendix episode, I don't think, on the next one. No. But if you do have things to say about that first area, once you've played it, just the way to get a hold of us in general is duckfeed.tv/contact. Mm-hmm. You can also go to facebook.com/bonfireside chat and hang out with us there.
Right. We would like to issue a very special thanks.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. So last night, as of when we're recording this, get a little email bloop from a listener who heard us last week talking about we don't have Wii U's just because money, time is not a priority, but we're both really interested in having them. And this listener, Mr. John Hurst, was ridiculously generous in donating enough money for us to buy Wii U's of our own.
Yeah. A listener essentially bought us Wii U's, which it's hard to explain it without making it. I'm not throwing any kind of shade, but whenever I say it's ridiculously generous, or anything like that, I don't mean you're insane, man. I don't mean it as it's very, very nice of you. Uh-huh. I feel really, really first, huge thank you to John. Mm-hmm. That's really, really kind of you, and it will be put to good use. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate it. I hope that you feel you feel that we provide, content then and entertainment enough that justifies that. Mm-hmm. And this suggests that you do, which is very humbling and flattering. Mm-hmm. And then also just a huge thank you to the to the people who listen to the show and the fans we've kind of cultivated, who are in very generous with their time and oftentimes with their money. And if not those things, just with their attention. Mm-hmm. And, not a moment goes by that I'm not very, very appreciative and humbled by that.
Yeah. Your guys' support. And I look at the numbers and I see how many of you there are. And I see, the stuff that comes in from the Amazon and from Patreon every month. That all is, life-changing in a way that kind of puts a lie to the way that life-changing is overused.
Yeah.
It is something that I think about every day, and grateful doesn't begin to describe. How I feel when I look at my email, when I check and see everybody coming out and paying attention to what we do and offering their kind support in so many different ways. The last thing that I want is for anybody to listen to that and feel compelled to do the last thing I want is for anybody to think that when we mention, hey,
who
we
wants to
we
buy
like
us
something.
2 Wii U's?
Yes. Yeah.
I can stand to race them. I'm not sharing with Kayla.
Yeah. So when somebody writes in and says, hey, do you have X, Y, or Z? And we say no, because time, money, all these limitations around us, please do not construe that as us thinking oh boy, I hope somebody listens.
Yeah.
That is not the case. In fact,
no, we were just talking and I had that thought too. And I had that kind of fear. I hope that we don't come off as pandery in that respect. And if we do, it is 100% on accident, because honestly, we were just talking about how we both were interested in this system.
Yeah.
We don't expect anyone to buy us consoles.
Right.
It is a super, super rare and special thing that this gentleman has done.
Mm-hmm. And because this, I forget if we have brought this forward as well, but one of our PS4s was essentially bought by another listener, one Robin, who is a vocal supporter of this show in particular, and was similarly generous. So this is kind of twofold, right? I want to. It's important that we recognize this generosity when it's there, because God, holy shit, this is so great to see. But also we want to be absolutely clear when where this comes from, if and when it does happen.
Yes.
So
it is, and I also hope that it makes me hope that at some point, if I am ever fiscally solvent enough, I can do that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Because I appreciate there are so many creators that I really love, and I do what I can to support them, and I think that's right and good, and a good thing to do. And if somebody, what I'm trying to get to grips with is just somebody's able to do more than I, usually would be able to do. And that's awesome and really cool. It's the kind of thing that if I was able to, I would do it.
Right.
Too, and it is awesome that he's able to, and I'm very lucky that I happen to be the recipient of that, as opposed to just being somebody who wished that I could do, that I could send, I don't know, Bob Mackey a gold-plated Majora's Mask, or something like that.
Yeah.
Like that would be nice. But I can't do that. But this guy, Ken, John was able to do that and did, and it's great.
Yeah. So once again, we appreciate not just John's generosity or anybody else who has kind of given one of those, big one-time things, one of those big one-time gifts to us, but also everybody who has continued to support us over Patreon. We're coming up on a year of having run that, and it can't be called anything other than a massive success, and that's 100% because of you guys.
Yeah. And I love that people are, it feels very good that people support us, but more than that, like there's this idea of this kind of, treadmill that you get into where like you feel good about something you've made, and then that fades really quick. And then you start feeling like absolute trash about something you made. And then, things like this come along and it makes you feel good again. And it just kind of like re-energizes us, like you don't have to it's just really cool that we can kind of unite around this common love of things. And I genuinely really appreciate, enjoy talking to people on Twitter and Facebook who listen to the show, or, I'm always happy, like if, an email, like people have sent in, concerns, and people have sent in just kind of like talking points and stuff. And anytime one of those emails crosses my email, like I answer it, I'm happy to, I like interacting with everybody here. I feel like super, I don't know where I'm going. I'm getting,
That's fine.
I'm not getting emotional. I'm getting rambly because I'm a little bit overwhelmed. But thanks.
It's a moment to stop and take stock. Yeah. And, I it's in my own personal life, I try and take, efforts to be as mindful as possible of what I should be grateful for and any kind of privilege that is bestowed on me by the generosity of those around me. So,
yes.
It is an effort to remain that way, but by God, if this isn't good, what is, to quote Vonnegut. So we gotta call them when we see them. We got to stop and say it when it happens. And, I don't know where I was going with that sentence.
It's gonna be super exciting. Like I'm going to go buy it soon.
I already have it.
And then, that's great. Like I'm looking forward to getting it, and I'm going to play some Super Mario 3D World, which is a game I have had a game boner for since I first saw it.
Yeah. Here's a tip. If you go to a Target at 8 a.m., there are 4 people working there. None of them want to talk to you, and they really don't want to sell you a Wii U.
Why? Makes no sense.
I know that I was there at 8 a.m.
No, that they don't want to sell you one.
Yeah, like I had to walk around. I was late for work because of this.
Worth it.
Yep.
I'm gonna get that Nintendo Land bundle. It's gonna be cool. I'm way excited. So again, thank you very much, John. And anybody else who, even if you're just listening to this, you get huge ups. I don't want, it's not a pissing contest. Right. And it is not, it's just, we really appreciate everything, the entire scale of what people give to us. And and hopefully you feel like it's worth it.
Yeah.
So
before we leave, I just want to remind everybody that if you go to Duckfeed.tv/shirts, you can find the trap snakes and turtles pillars. That's another great way to support the show. And that campaign lasts again for about 2 weeks after this comes out.
Yeah, and we want to see pictures once you get them.
Yeah.
When we did the Watch Out for Fireball shirts, people sent us pictures, and it was really cool. So, and thank you. And until the next time, what should they do, Cole?
They should seek light, dark, and what lies beyond.
Yeah.
Yeah. Umbasa.
Umbasa.
And we all pray that we will have far more soon.
What should they do, Cole?
One moment. I need to find the actual quote.
There is no path.
Let me see here. It's so doing a Control F for seek. Okay. Is no help. Okay. I'll take it back in.
Okay.